Last week, I sat on the couch with a close friend who was just venting about being permanently single. She's smart, she's attractive, and she keeps telling me she just wants a decent, normal connection,
Yeah.
you know? So to prove how dire the whole landscape was, she opened a dating app to show me her terrible options. And what happened next was, it was genuinely unsettling. Her thumb started moving with this rhythmic, glazed-eyed speed, like a slot machine addict at 3 in the morning. It was just laugh, laugh, laugh. A guy with a nice smile. She's like, you were
Oh.
insured. A guy who wrote a genuinely thoughtful bio. Ugh, too intense. A guy who looked completely, totally normal. Boring vibe. In the span of maybe 2 minutes, she ruthlessly discarded about 50 men, and most of them fit her own verbal description of a good guy perfectly. She, incinerated the entire male population of our zip code in the time it took to finish her espresso. And the contradiction was just so jarring. Here she was, genuinely distressed by a lack of options, while at the same time she was acting as the executioner for dozens of potential matches. She looked exhausted by it, but she couldn't stop the motion. Watching that trance-like state, it hit me. This wasn't arrogance, it wasn't even valid screening, it looked like a biological short circuit. She wasn't a person looking for love anymore, she was a Stone Age hunter-gatherer trapped in a digital casino, and her software was just completely crashing. And that moment really crystallized the mission for this deep dive. Millions of us, maybe you, maybe someone you know, we feel this profound contradiction. We genuinely want connection, yet we find ourselves being ruthlessly critical, burned out, and just utterly exhausted by the search. We have access to more potential partners than any other time in human history, but paradoxically, we're experiencing this profound loneliness. So we're going to look into the mechanisms behind this feeling of burnout and these contradictions that so many users feel. Why does it feel like the system itself is rigged against our own biology?
And that's exactly the right word for it. It is your biology. That frustration is rooted in a really essential scientific concept, an evolutionary mismatch.
An evolutionary mismatch.
Exactly. The issue isn't really one of individual failing or that people are suddenly too picky. It's a fundamental clash between our ancient, evolved biology and this completely novel digital environment. So we need to analyze how our ancient brain software, which was designed for small-scale intimacy and resource scarcity, how it reacts to a digital world that is explicitly built for abundance, for speed, and critically engineered for addiction.
Okay, let's unpack that. The core conflict is that the software we're all running in our heads, the way we assess potential mates, it was optimized for a world that just doesn't exist anymore. So what did that ancient environment, the one that, created our psychological wiring, what did it actually look like?
Well, our operating system was calibrated for survival within very small, extremely tight-knit social groups.
Yeah.
Anthropological research suggests that human communities rarely exceeded about 150 stable relationships. This is the range defined by Dunbar's number.
Dunbar's number, I've heard of that.
Right. So if you lived in that ancestral setting, your realistic local dating pool was tiny. Maybe 10 or 15 potential mates in total.
215, that's it.
That's it. And your selection wasn't instantaneous. It wasn't a swipe. It was based on deep contextual information that you gathered over years. You knew their status, their character, their family stability, their resourcefulness.
So the stakes were just astronomical. If you only had 10 options, you could not afford to make a mistake. You certainly couldn't scroll past someone after one awkward joke.
Exactly. And the intensity of that selection process is rooted in something called parental investment theory.
Okay.
Because the reproductive cost and risk for females were historically so much higher. You're talking about gestation, lactation. Years of raising a vulnerable child evolution basically installed a rigorous risk management system.
A risk management system.
Right. This process is often called hypergamy. And it's essentially a necessary, deeply ingrained risk calculation. It's designed to select the most resourceful and highest status partner available in that small world of scarcity.
So it's about survival.
It ensures the best possible survival outcome for the next generation. It was a rigorous, scarcity-optimized algorithm.
But then you introduce the internet, and suddenly that highly selective algorithm, which was designed to choose the absolute best of 10, is suddenly fed an infinite stream of input.
And that's the crash.
That is the moment the system crashes. So what's the term for this artificial inflation of desirability?
We call it the digital supernormal stimulus.
A supernormal stimulus?
Yeah. A supernormal stimulus is defined as an exaggerated version of a natural stimulus that exploits and hijacks the brain's evolved preferences.
So it's like a hack.
It's a total hack. Think of it this way. Our ancient brain is a highly specialized lock And the dating app is an artificially amplified key that's designed specifically to jam that lock. The app is not a small tribe, it's an infinite digital buffet. It's a continuous, high-frequency stream of faces.
And the supernormal part is key here, right? It's not just the sheer volume of people, it's the quality, or rather the illusion of quality, that really warps your perception. You're not seeing reality.
You're not seeing reality at all. The stimulus is amplified because you aren't seeing the average person. You're viewing curated highlight reels.
Right, everyone's vacation photos.
Everyone's best photo. Every profile is the top 1% of their presentation. Professional photos, perfect lighting, descriptions of exotic travel, and these highly optimized, witty self-summaries. So the brain, which is accustomed to selecting the best partner out of a handful of realistic, flawed people, is suddenly faced with thousands of seemingly top-tier, high-status individuals.
And that artificial inflation, it just elevates the baseline for what's acceptable to an impossibly high level.
Evolution simply never prepared us for this environment. It's a complete system overload.
And the result of all this digital abundance is what we call the paradox of abundance. And there's a story of a woman named Alara that really shows how this paralyzes people.
Oh, Alara's story is a textbook case of this digital paralysis. She's a marketing executive, and she had something like 3,000 likes in her queue.
3,000.
Yeah. She is constantly validated. Her phone is an endless dopamine drip. So she goes on a date with this guy, Tom, who's a perfectly decent guy. But the abundance, the mere possibility of something marginally better, starts to work on her brain.
So what happens?
When Tom makes one slightly awkward joke, her ancient software kicks in. She goes to the bathroom, opens the app for a quick break, and immediately sees 3 new profiles that look taller or wittier or maybe higher status than the man who is literally sitting across from her.
Wow. So her brain registers that rush of excitement, the possibility of perfection, and that synthetic baseline makes Tom immediately feel inadequate, even though a minute ago he was perfectly fine.
She ghosts Tom. And it's not because he was genuinely bad, but because the system encourages her to emotionally check out and just chase the dopamine hit of the next profile.
It's the chase.
The article noted that the mere possibility of a perfect mate just one swipe away paralyzed her ability to commit to the real, flawed, achievable connection she had right in front of her. The sheer volume of choice, this illusion of endless high-quality options, it creates what's called a profound cage of indecision.
And that leads directly to burnout.
She's exhausted precisely because she can't allow herself to be satisfied. There's always another swipe.
So if that's the experience of a highly desirable woman, then the competitive landscape for men is the brutal inverse of that. It's what we call the winner-take-all market. They aren't facing abundance. They are facing, what, erasure?
Erasure is the right word. For men, the competitive landscape is crushing and completely unprecedented. Ancestrally, most men had a reasonable chance within their local dating pool.
Right, in that group of 10 or 15.
Exactly. But on the app, you're competing with every single other eligible man in a 50-mile radius. And you are judged in a fraction of a second, based primarily on a handful of curated photos.
The filtering mechanism isn't for personality?
No, it's optimized for physical aesthetics and perceived status, not for long-term compatibility. It's a beauty contest.
And the data on that match rate is just shocking. It's not just a perceived bias. It's a measurable, massive competitive inequality.
Oh, the statistics are uncompromising, and they confirm this profound skew. The average man's match rate is a minuscule 0.6%.
0.6, not even 1%.
Not even close. And this polarization leads directly to that infamous 80-20 rule, where the top 78% of women are effectively competing for just the top 20% of men.
That is an insane ratio.
It is. It means the vast majority of men, the remaining 80%, are left to compete over a dwindling 22% of the available pool.
So for the average man, the experience isn't even rejection. You don't even get that far.
It's invisibility. It is erasure. It's a psychological harm that just accrues over time because the system is literally designed to ignore their efforts.
It transforms what should be a local social activity into a high-frequency global trading floor where most participants are just. They're deemed unworthy before they even get a chance to meaningfully engage.
And when we look at the downstream effects of this engineered and polarized environment, the result is a widespread psychological toll. This isn't just people being casually annoyed. It's a quantifiable public health trend that's manifesting as widespread burnout.
The statistics on this burnout are so consistent, they really can't be ignored. This is a systemic fatigue.
It is entirely systemic. A staggering 78% of users report some level of burnout.
78%, that's almost 4 out of 5 people.
And the frustration is intense and widely shared. 74% of users feel frustrated with their dating experiences, and 58% agree that modern dating negatively affects their mental health.
And this feeling of exhaustion, it's leading to a concrete consequence, right? People are leaving.
They are. Top dating apps have recently seen a nearly 16% decline in usage. People are simply walking away because the experience is described less as a pursuit of love and more as a mandatory, joyless chore.
And that sustained, high-friction environment takes a profound mental health toll beyond just simple annoyance. What are the specific psychological impacts that we're seeing?
Well, we see increased feelings of isolation and reduced self-worth. 54% of participants in one study reported that modern dating experiences actively contribute to feelings of isolation and loneliness.
So the very tool designed to cure loneliness is actually making it worse for a majority of people.
That's the tragic irony. Furthermore, 52% felt that dating had negatively impacted their self-esteem in just the past month.
Wow.
When you combine the experience of perpetual erasure for men with the endless indecision for women, it naturally generates feelings of sadness, depression, anxiety, or stress. 54% of survey participants reported experiencing that as a direct result of these interactions.
It sounds like the environment itself is a compounding factor for people who might already be struggling with vulnerability. Let's go back to the casino analogy. How does the design itself become an addiction mechanism that exploits these vulnerabilities?
The key is the variable reward schedule. It's the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines so devastatingly addictive.
Okay.
It's called intermittent reinforcement. You swipe, nothing. You swipe again, nothing, nothing. Your brain starts to tire. It starts to give up. Then suddenly, ding, you get a match. You get a validation.
And that reward is unpredictable.
That's the crucial part.
Yeah.
It's unpredictable, which means your brain can never adapt to its absence. That little jolt of dopamine, that small hit of pleasure and hope, is just enough to keep you pulling the lever, often for hours on end.
So the app isn't engineered to deliver satisfaction. It's engineered to deliver that random intermittent jolt of hope.
Exactly.
It never fully satisfies, but it delivers just enough to ensure this compulsive loyalty and prevent you from just giving up entirely.
Precisely. The app is selling tiny, intermittent doses of hope. As behavioral experts note, the whole system is engineered to prolong the search. This compulsive need to keep checking, to keep swiping, is fueled by the pursuit of that validation hit, which feels powerful even if the eventual outcome is completely unsatisfying.
And that structural failure, particularly the invisibility experienced by so many men, leads to widespread societal withdrawal. The story of Liam, the engineer who just gave up, is particularly heartbreaking.
Liam's experience is sadly so representative. He's 32. An educated engineer in a major metro area, objectively, a desirable partner. But his 2 years on the apps were characterized by thousands of swipes, leading to a crushing sense of invisibility.
So he's just shouting into a void.
Completely. He felt like he was competing in that brutal winner-take-all market without any way to actually communicate his value beyond a few pictures.
And he didn't interpret that silence as a failure of the platform or the algorithm. He internalized it. He saw it as a profound personal failure.
That is the tragedy of erasure. He interpreted the systemic failure of the digital interface as a biological verdict. He thought it meant he was inherently unworthy or defective.
He said he felt ground down by a digital interface.
And consequently, he opted out entirely. He didn't just delete the apps, he withdrew from the dating market altogether. He started focusing on solo hobbies and work, creating this lasting vacuum in his future relationship formation potential.
This withdrawal isn't just anecdotal either. We are seeing major demographic and sociological shifts, particularly within Gen Z, that reflect a collective rejection of the traditional relationship model. And it's often linked to this kind of burnout.
Oh, the trend of withdrawal and changing priorities within Gen Z is significant. Data shows that 46% of Gen Z are single. Compare that to only 28% of millennials.
That's a huge jump.
It is. They are actively redefining what a successful life looks like, moving away from traditional relationship structures. For this cohort, long-term partnerships are less of an economic necessity than a choice, which allows them to prioritize independence, self-care, and achieving financial security first.
So they're looking at the realities: student debt, stagnant wages, the high cost of housing, just the general grind of modern capitalism. And they're deciding that traditional relationships, especially those based on outdated gender roles, are simply not a safe or beneficial investment in their future stability.
That is exactly the sociological interpretation. They grew up watching previous generations struggle with economic instability, and they are rejecting the default path to happiness. There's less pressure from the stigma of being single and much higher value placed on autonomy and community outside of coupled relationships.
What's the prediction there?
Analysts predict this shift could lead to long-term declining marriage rates and a cultural movement favoring platonic and alternative relationship structures.
So if the problem is this evolutionary mismatch and all this psychological harm, and the data clearly shows people are burning out and leaving, why don't the companies just fix the problem? Why don't they give people what they want? This takes us to the cynical core of the matter, the corporate conflict of interest. The anecdote from David, the former product manager, is absolutely vital here.
David's story reveals the cold calculation behind the design. David worked at one of the major dating app conglomerates, and his engineering team successfully developed an improved match quality algorithm.
Okay.
It would genuinely lead to more successful relationships, more dates, better long-term fit. This sounds like an ideal outcome.
Yeah, that sounds like great PR and great customer satisfaction. Why would leadership possibly reject something that demonstrably improved their product?
Because it would kill recurring revenue.
Ah.
When David presented this successful algorithm, leadership immediately focused on one key metric: user lifetime value.
User lifetime value.
They calculated that if the algorithm worked too well, users would find partners and delete the app, thereby killing recurring revenue. The leadership directive was chilling and explicit. They must optimize solely for engagement.
Engagement, not success.
Engagement means maximizing time spent on the app, not achieving a successful outcome for the user.
Wow. So they literally profit from our misery. The user's frustration, the perpetual search, it's intentionally built into the product. It's a feature, not a bug, because the business model literally depends on the problem remaining unsolved.
That is the necessary insight you have to have. The Match Group's overall strategy, and they control dozens of platforms, relies on the freemium model. They need a massive free user base to maximize the network effect, which gives the app its perceived value.
Right, more people means more options.
But they monetize by selling premium features to users who are kept in this state of hopeful yet perpetual searching. And while they face challenges like declining total payers, which were down 5% in a recent quarter, they combat this by increasing the revenue per payer, the RPP, through those premium features. The incentive is entirely skewed toward prolonged engagement.
This moves us beyond just accidental addition and into what you have to call the intentional architecture of manipulation. What are the specific design choices that are engineered to exploit our vulnerabilities and maximize revenue?
The designs are basically behavioral traps built on three key mechanisms. The first is gamification.
Gamification?
Features like badges, match streaks, time-sensitive boosts, and virtual tokens. They transform the emotional pursuit of a relationship into a quantifiable competitive task.
It's a video game.
It shifts your motivation away from authentic relational intent towards a metric-based success that's defined by the platform. You stop looking for love and you start managing a competitive score.
And then there are the dark patterns and paywalls, which are designed to intentionally mislead or exploit our inertia as users.
A dark pattern is an interface design that exploits cognitive biases or just fatigue to manipulate you into taking commercially beneficial actions you might not otherwise choose. It often undermines your informed consent.
And this industry.
In this industry, we see Tinder's boost features, which promise higher visibility for a fee or the explicit paywalling of desirable profiles.
The perfect example of this has to be the notorious rose jail mechanism in Hinge.
Exactly. Hinge's standout section uses AI to curate profiles that are highly aligned with the user's preferences, making them extremely desirable.
So they show you your perfect match.
And then, to interact with these profiles, you must send a rose, which is a premium paid feature. This deliberately puts the most desirable matches behind a paywall, frustrating free users and encouraging them to pay for access to the very desirability the app just manufactured for them.
And the culmination of all this is the dizzying pricing chaos, especially on a massive platform like Tinder.
Tinder's subscription tiers Plus, Gold, Platinum are a perfect example of extracting value through confusion and psychological manipulation.
And they have that insane top tier.
They have the astonishing invitation-only Tinder Select tier, priced at an unbelievable $499 per month.
$500 a month.
And this serves as textbook decoy pricing. It makes the $35.99 Platinum option seem entirely reasonable by comparison.
But the features you get aren't even that good.
That's the problem. The features offered in these tiers like basic profile prompts or read receipts or dark mode are often superficial. They do not address the fundamental user pain points, like better filtering based on relationship goals.
So you end up paying an exorbitant amount of money for things like a virtual badge or a slight visibility bump, but you are still stuck in the casino perpetually swiping because the platform hasn't actually solved the core problem of finding a compatible partner.
The tiers are convoluted, they confuse users, and the monetized features don't address the primary user dissatisfaction, the failure to find a meaningful connection. And the complexity of these manipulative designs is precisely why legal analysis is starting to focus on the impact these systems have on our cognitive autonomy.
Okay, so if the issue is the architecture, we have to ask, is ethical design even possible? Or are all these platforms just doomed to the same profit-driven manipulative structure? The new wave of AI integration really forces platforms to choose. Will AI be a mediator that enhances human connection, or just another tool for exploitation?
That choice is being made right now. Hinge, for instance, has consciously adopted a human-centered approach to technology. Their strategy uses AI as a behind-the-scenes coach to enhance existing human communication.
Not as a replacement for it.
Not as a replacement for conversation or a way to simulate intimacy.
So how does Hinge use AI to genuinely enhance the experience without making the user feel like they're just interacting with a robot?
Take their prompt feedback feature. Hinge uses a small language model, something like GPT-4o Mini, not to write your profile for you, but to evaluate and coach your existing profile responses.
So it's like a writing coach.
It's exactly like that. It gives you subtle, helpful feedback, saying, for example, go a little deeper or try a small change. It addresses a critical friction point that 63% of users struggle with crafting good profiles, yet it pointedly refuses to supply suggested language.
And that is a crucial distinction. It helps you articulate your authentic self better rather than creating some synthetic AI-generated persona. It enhances authenticity, it doesn't replace it.
And that focus on quality over quantity is Hinge's defining strategic differentiator. They also directly tackle the burnout caused by ghosting and message accumulation with their Your Turn Limits feature.
The huge backlog of unanswered conversations that contributes so massively to emotional fatigue.
Precisely. If a user has 8 or more unanswered conversations in their queue, the app forces them to either respond to those existing discussions or proactively end them before they can match with new people.
That's interesting.
This forced intentionality resulted in a 20% increase in responsiveness and helped users focus on their current matches. This is a deliberate design choice that restricts the infinite scroll and forces users to be mindful.
And this speaks to Hinge's incredibly clear strategic clarity, which really contrasts with the rest of the industry.
Hinge's brand positioning is masterful. The relationship app designed to be deleted. They are explicitly optimizing for the user's outcome. A successful relationship, not prolonged engagement.
And it's working for them financially.
This consistent strategic clarity has allowed it to reach $550 million in revenue recently, demonstrating 38% year-over-year growth, even while its competitors struggle with burnout. They prioritize long-term compatibility, reportedly using a modified Gale-Shapley algorithm, which is known for creating stable matches, rather than just popularity-optimized matches.
Now, compare that success with the recent struggles of Bumble, which historically held the moral high ground with its women-first model. We saw what was described as the Bumble fumble.
It was profound strategic and marketing misalignment. In early 2024, they launched this really tone-deaf, anti-celibacy campaign billboards with slogans that essentially dismissed the valid burnout experience by their core female user base.
It was a huge miss.
It completely failed to align their girl boss brand with the harsh user reality.
And then they introduced a strategic product decision that fundamentally undermined their entire value proposition.
The introduction of opening moves. It allows men to message first by responding to generic opening questions placed on women's profiles. This directly undermines the core women-first value proposition that defined Bumble for years.
It's no longer women make the first move.
Exactly. Analysts see this as dating app convergence syndrome, a frantic, self-sabotaging race to copy features that just erodes any brand distinctiveness. Bumble risks ending up in a strategic no man's land without its original necessary differentiator.
We should also briefly touch on Grindr, which has found significant growth by leaning into its community focus, the global gayborhood in your pocket.
Grindr's strategy is built on embracing existing user behavior. They leverage the critical insight that 27% of their users are travelers at any given time.
So instead of fighting that
reality, they built features around it. Things like the Explore heat map, a travel pass, and they've even integrated health and wellness services. They are successfully transforming into a community infrastructure that goes beyond simple hookups. And this strategic clarity has yielded impressive 27% year-over-year revenue growth.
But even with that strong specific growth, they are not immune to the tension we talked about earlier, revenue generation versus user satisfaction.
That tension is extreme. Despite the revenue success, Grindr maintains abysmal user satisfaction ratings. They score only 1.1 out of 5 on Trustpilot.
1.1, that's terrible.
The reason is the aggressive monetization. Users frequently complain about overwhelming ads and the paywalling of basic, essential features, like the ability to block unwanted profiles. This just demonstrates that even when a strategic concept is clear, aggressive monetization tactics can severely degrade the user experience and threaten long-term sustainability.
So we've established that this is a systemic, a biological, and an economic problem, and it's driven by intentional design. Now we have to shift the context. What does the law and what does ethics say about platforms that are intentionally exploiting human vulnerability for profit?
We need to acknowledge that the tools we are discussing, the AI systems, the algorithms, the interface design, they are not neutral. They are cultural technologies.
Cultural technologies.
They don't just exist in the background. They actively and profoundly reshape human cognition, communication, and social structures. Generative AI, for example, is transforming the emotional landscape by simulating emotional understanding, what researchers call artificial intimacy,
Right.
and it exploits our innate tendency to anthropomorphize, to perceive agency in machines.
And when design turns into manipulation that harms users, the law has to start stepping in to protect the individual from the platform.
That is the core principle behind the growing legal fight for cognitive autonomy. In the U.S., the Match Group litigation provides a powerful precedent. Plaintiffs there allege that the applications were intentionally engineered to foster compulsive engagement rather than meaningful connection.
And how did they frame that legally?
They framed design features like intermittent reinforcement and opaque algorithmic curation as systemic manipulation, a legally actionable harm that targets user vulnerabilities.
It sounds like the U.S. litigation is essentially defining the business model itself as a form of manipulation that mirrors the concerns being addressed in Europe with the EU AI Act.
It is the exact kind of conduct the EU aims to prohibit. The key legal intervention is Article 5.1 of the EU AI Act. This article prohibits AI systems that use subliminal or manipulative techniques beyond conscious awareness that materially distort behavior and are likely to cause significant harm.
And that's designed to protect.
It's designed explicitly to protect cognitive autonomy, your right to make free, unmanipulated decisions.
That concept protecting cognitive autonomy is really abstract. What are the 3 required legal components that would have to be proven for this prohibition to apply in court?
There are 3 cumulative elements. First, you must prove the use of manipulative or deceptive techniques, like dark patterns. Second, the influence must occur outside the person's conscious awareness. It must circumvent reflective decision-making. You have to prove the design bypasses conscious thought.
Wait, how does a prosecutor prove that my decision to keep endlessly swiping was beyond conscious awareness? That seems almost impossible.
That is the crucial legal hurdle. They would argue that the variable reward schedule, when it's delivered consistently over time, that intermittent reinforcement, it works on the primal reward centers of the brain so quickly and efficiently that it circumvents conscious, rational choice. The system exploits a biological mechanism that is outside the user's self-awareness.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third component?
Third, there must be a material distortion of behavior that is likely to cause significant harm. The distortion is material if it impairs your ability to make a free and informed decision. For instance, choosing to pay for an expensive tier or spend hours swiping instead of engaging in real-world activity. And that harm includes psychological impacts like anxiety, isolation, or low self-esteem.
And this protection is reinforced by the broader human rights framework. How does something like Article 8 of the ECHR, the right to private life, how does that extend into regulating the design of a dating app?
Well, the jurisprudence around Article 8, the right to respect for private life, has expanded over time. It now encompasses the protection of psychological integrity and informational self-determination.
So it's not just about privacy from being spied on.
No. Manipulative design, especially when it exploits vulnerabilities like loneliness or the deep human need for connection, is viewed as interference with our capacity to form relationships, free from covert commercial manipulation. When platforms are structurally designed to erode our autonomy over time, it engages the state's obligation to protect its citizens from serious harm, even from private actors.
So if they are knowingly exploiting our deepest emotional desires and vulnerabilities for profit, what does philosophy say about that moral violation?
Philosophy gives us two very clear lenses for judgment. Under Kantian ethics, the manipulative design violates the categorical imperative, the principle of respect for persons as ends in themselves.
Right.
By designing systems solely to maximize profit through compulsive engagement, the platforms treat users merely as instruments, as means for achieving external goals, thereby undermining their moral autonomy and their human dignity.
And from a results-based or consequentialist perspective, the designs fail simply because of the outcome, regardless of whatever the platform's intent was.
Absolutely. From a consequentialist viewpoint, the designs are ethically indefensible because they result in widespread psychological harm, reduced autonomy, diminished emotional well-being, and increased loneliness. They fail to maximize overall human welfare.
So the consensus is building.
The consensus is building. When systems are engineered to encourage compulsive use and exploit emotional vulnerabilities, the trust they demand is unearned, and legal accountability is required to protect human dignity and our capacity for genuine connection. We've taken this deep dive from recognizing the personal frustration of burnout to understanding its systemic roots in evolutionary biology, economic exploitation, and intentional design. The frustration that you and so many others feel is not a reflection of individual failure. It's a function of an environment that is designed to conflict with your deepest biological needs for meaningful intimacy.
And the core takeaway for me is clear. The problem is not that individuals have fundamentally changed, but that the environment we are all forced to use is fundamentally mismatched with our biology. It is a design optimized not for the relationship success we crave, but for the prolonged, addictive engagement that keeps us swiping and keeps the company profitable. We are trying to find enduring human connection in a system that's built for high-frequency consumption.
And this leads us to the profound realization that we must all internalize.
Yeah.
We're all currently test subjects in an unregulated global experiment of behavior, cognition, and emotion.
Yeah.
If we fail to fully interrogate the economic models and the human instincts that these systems exploit, we risk normalizing a future where artificial engineered intimacy, where loneliness is a feature and autonomy is a luxury, becomes the standard for human connection.